All right. First off, me, Freiherr Friedrich Schwarzwalder, out of Mark. I love doing the history. I do generally a German persona. Pennsic, I tend to dress down because it's hot. And the wool gets to be a little sticky. I've got more people coming. Nope, they're passing me by. Sad. Best book on the individual alone, the Greg Steinmetz book. It's in the sources. There's a bunch of other books out there, other research out there on the family, the business, and all that. That's the best one there. There's a web page on him that's in the sources too that's also really good. Who are we talking about? Jakob Fugger the Younger. Generally an interesting character, very ruthless. Maybe lady. Second here. There's a handout for you.
Oh, thanks so much.
Yep. Get my hand up. Listed as, richest man of all time. Maybe. He's definitely top 3. It all depends on how you calculate wealth, if he's actually the richest. It could be him, it could be Mansa Musa from the 13th century, or it could be John David Rockefeller. All come in, depending on how you calculate it, in a very similar number, which is personal wealth of approximately 400 billion in today's dollars.
400.
Yes, 400 billion in today's dollars. That's personal, not business wealth. Yes. Sorry, got somebody else coming in. There it is. You can order? Thank you. You bet.
So Elon Musk is a small timer.
Yes. Again, he was March 6th, 1459, December 30th, 1525. Whoa, are you okay? Are you okay?
You all right there?
The dulcimer's okay.
Okay.
Wow.
Oh dear.
Yeah, chair just broke in there.
Your body. Yeah. Well, that's a bar.
Let me bring you a different chair.
You can edit that, right?
Add a little drama to it. You were so overwhelmed by the class.
Lord.
Floored by my teaching. Thank you. 7 money-making lessons from Jakob Fugger. Invest when others fear. You will see that in here. He invested in times, especially in Austria, Hungary, and Tyrol, when the Ottomans were invading, and nobody else would lend the money to fund their armies. Fugger did, at, of course, a high profit to himself. Be indispensable. There were a time where if you wanted, like Holy Roman Emperor Charles V, who we'll mention in here, he won Holy Roman Emperor because of Jakob Fugger. Fugger funded him because Holy Roman Emperor went to the person who spent the most money. Plain and simple. If you put the most money into the 7 electors' hands, you became the Holy Roman Emperor. Fugger made sure that happened with Charles V. He was the only one who could do that. Know the facts. He started his own intelligence network. Yeah. He had bank branches all over Europe, and he started with the network, every branch he had, that he would have agents out there to know what was going on in those territories. He had a loan out with Henry VIII. Henry VIII told him, the ships with your repayment have already left. They should be to you shortly.
The check is in the mail.
Yes. His agents had already told him those ships are still docked in London. He knew it before Henry even told him. He knew he was lying. Get a good education. He took full advantage of his time when he was apprenticed in Venice, Italy, to learn everything there was to know about the finance, banking, commercialism, accounting, anything he could think of. He took full advantage to gain the knowledge that would help him in later life. Keep your cool. I'm gonna hand it one more flyer here. There you go. You betcha. Keep your cool. There is a thing you'll see in here, the Fugger crisis of 1509. Yes?
Your Excellency, what was he apprenticed to be?
He worked in it was in the textile business.
Okay.
Yep. I'll get into that more. Oh, hold on. I don't think I got you your sources for yours. And I got more people coming in. This is awesome. I like the numbers. It's the new ones.
So Venice, when you say textiles, do you mean like silk or brokering the Flemish, other people's textiles?
Oh, it was all of it. They did all of that. They were working with the Egyptian cotton. They were getting everything coming through Venice and going out into Europe.
So it's like commodities kind of stuff.
Oh, one more, certainly. Yes. Yeah, very much like commodity trade. Sorry. So, yeah, keep your cool during the crisis that we'll get to of 1509. He bluffed the Vatican. The Vatican could have bankrupted him, and he bluffed his way out of it. Yeah.
All of these stories are going to be.
Yep, I get. Yep,
Okay.
yep,
You're
you'll
teasing
get to
me
them,
now, okay.
and then give something back. In most of the world, at this time period, they hated this man because of what he did. He was ruthless. Everything he did was solely for financial gain. That was it. The rest of the world hated him. His home city of Augsburg, he was a saint. He gave back so much to that city. To this day, they still idolize this man in Augsburg. The background. This is a family that 2 generations before were the bottom level textile merchants. His grandfather Hans started the family textile business in Augsburg. So they were at the bottom rung of the commoner who was doing merchanting. His grandfather died young. His grandmother took over the business and ran it for about 20 years, which was pretty unheard of at that time. His father then took over, Jacob the Elder. Again, he took over the business, ran it for a little while, made a few improvements, bumped them up the ladder a little bit, but they're just still merchants. Father died when Jacob was young. Mother took over the business, ran it for another 20 years. Later on in life, well, a little bit later, his 2 brothers started the new business of the Fugger brothers, which was George, Ulrich, and Jacob. Jacob was 10 years old when his father died. He was the youngest of 7 sons. What happens normally when you're the youngest of 7 sons in a family?
You join the army.
You get thrown to the wolves.
Yeah, pretty much. His mother sent him to be a priest. Oh, somebody coming in. Thank you for pointing that out. Sorry. Oh, no problem. There you go. His mother sent him off to be a priest. The priest noted, this guy has an eye for business. He's helping us out around the monastery with our finances at 10, 12 years old. Yeah, he had the mind for it. At 14, his mother pulled him out of the monastery, sent him off to Venice to work in the textile companies of Venice. His mother got him an internship while he was there. He learned Latin, he learned importing, he learned exporting, accounting, banking, all of this he had learned while he was there. Get a good education. He took full advantage of this internship in Venice to learn as much as he possibly could about how industry worked, how banking worked, how everything in finance worked. And he took it and ran. Family coat of arms. His older brother Ulrich gave the Holy Roman Emperor Frederick wools and silks as a gift. He gave him a whole boatload of wools and silks as a gift. In exchange, the 3 brothers were granted a coat of arms of 3 lilies, which for some reason when he shows it on his own, he only shows 2, but he was granted, with his three brothers, the coat of arms of 3 lilies. His marriage, and this is his marriage portrait. His wife was 22 years his junior. He had absolutely no interest in her whatsoever. It was purely a financial decision for him, this wedding. His wife's father was the Grand Burgher of the city of Augsburg. This elevated him from merchant status here to burgher status. He's now here, he's now above the merchant level in his social standing. Gives him more business contacts, gives him more opportunities, and he's got a little bit better title. So he's bumped the family up another level. More people. I am so thrilled. You just kind of hand those back. There's a couple of them in there. As an example of how he cared for his wonderful wife, he purchased a diamond from the Duchy of Burgundy that was called the Three Brothers. This is a approximately 300 carat diamond. Yeah, it was part of the crown jewels of Burgundy. And he purchased this as a gift for his wife. That was the premise for the purchase. Within a couple years, he sold it to Henry VIII. It is now part of the crown jewels of England. To this day, it's still in the crown jewels of England. So yeah, no interest in her at all. She was a financial decision.
How old was she and he when they married?
She was 22 years younger.
Yeah, but
So
you
he
don't know
was-
how old she was?
Let me figure out 14, let me find my years here.
Why don't I distract you?
Oh, you're fine, you're fine. He would have been in 1498, so about 30. She'd have probably been about 15, 16, in that range. It was, yeah, it was
That's an old
purely,
maid, yeah.
purely a financial decision, yes.
Maybe you said this and I missed it. From where did he purchase the diamond?
From the Duchy of Burgundy. Yeah, yeah, it's all good. I like questions, so feel free. Questions are my friend because I forget things. Mining trade. You had asked about it. This is part of those 7 things. Invest when others fear. The Ottomans were invading Hungary, Austria, Tyrol. Nobody would give those territories the money to fund their armies. Fugger did. He loaned them the money. But in exchange for the loan, because loans at this time, the church would not allow for-profit lending. If you loaned, you could not charge interest. It was illegal. You could add a service fee on the end, which most people did. He took it a step further. He wanted territory. He got control of the world's largest silver mine in existence at that time from the Archduke Sigmund of Tyrol. At times he controlled for several years the entire Tyrolean output of silver and copper. All of it was under his control. He invested also, the Hungarians were in the same boat. He did the same thing in exchange for control of the Hungarian copper mining industry. By the time he was done with the Ottoman invasion, he controlled almost a full monopoly of the copper trade of Europe.
Remind me how the Hungarians and the
Tyroleans?
yeah, how did they do against the invasion?
Now, the Hungarians didn't do well. The Tyroleans and the Austrians were able to stop them at the gates of Vienna. They made it up to Vienna before they were driven
the
back.
country that he had the mines and getting invaded would have made them less productive.
Yeah, but they were able to still, once they pushed the Ottomans back, he took his territories,
Yeah.
took his industries.
The Hungarians weren't so much killed off as they retreated to Bratislava,
Yeah.
so they could then go back and recover their land.
Correct.
I see.
Yep.
It took a while to get your
Yeah, he
return on
ended up with
investment.
with an almost complete monopoly of the copper mines. Did you hand that or? Okay, thank you. Holy Roman Emperor Maximilian I. Interesting guy. I did a class with him too one time. Really neat guy. His whole purpose was, I am awesome, let everybody know it. But Fugger financed weddings for Maximilian. At one point, by the early 1500s, almost all of Italy was controlled by families that were direct descendants or direct relatives of Maximilian I. Every single Naples, Venice, Milan, all those territories had relatives of Maximilian I on their seat of power. Now all financed by Fugger to arrange those marriages. To pay off some of his debts, he gave territory to Fugger. He sold the county of Kirchenberg, located within Ulm, to the Fuggers in exchange for money. He gave him the lordships of Weissenhorn and the city of Weissenhorn. He also gave him in Austria, Wallenstetten and Pfaffenhofen in Austria. In 1508, he sold Schmiechen, sorry, my pronunciation, Schmiechen to him. He also sold him the Lord of Bieberbach. By the time he was done, Fugger controlled over 50 territories within Austria and Germany.
So once he gets that land, does that make him the lord of
Yes.
and the count of Ulm and all that stuff?
Well, he didn't quite have the count title yet, but he had the lordship, which meant all the taxes from those territories went to him. Again, if he did it, it was for money. That was why he did anything he did.
Who did he trust to help run all this stuff? You can't run all that alone.
Mostly he did, but he had his agents. He had
Doesn't
people.
sound like he's not working on producing sons or anything.
Yeah, we'll get to that one. That was a problem. In 1511, Maximilian, again, in exchange for money, promoted him to the nobility. And by 1514, he was listed as an imperial count. So he has gone from merchant to burgher to nobility in his lifetime. Yeah, that's ruthless business at its finest. The reason he made him an imperial count and not a territorial count was none of the local nobility could overrule him because he had the authority of the Holy Roman Emperor. Instead of just saying, I'm the count of this territory, no, he wouldn't have authority as much over the others, but by making him an imperial count, he had authority over all those territories.
So like, instead of being a landed baron and a court baron, he was
Yes.
a court count.
Yes. Good way of putting it, yes. His relationships with the Vatican. He did a lot with them. Pope Alexander VI in 1500. You like St. Peter's? Fugger. St. Peter's Basilica was funded by Jakob Fugger. The Sistine Chapel. You like that one? Fugger. He financed it. Yeah. And he also did several other buildings within Vatican City, churches and other administrative buildings within the Vatican City. He financed their construction.
How did the Vatican pay that?
We'll get there. Good question. We will get there. Pope Julius II, next pope. 1505, he financed the Swiss Guard, which was established in 1505 and exists to this day as the standing army of the Vatican City. He is the man responsible for starting it. And he also, under Julius II, continued to finance the work on St. Peter's and all the other buildings. Then we get to Pope Leo X in 1517. And you're asking about how did he repay all this money? Well, it came on Leo to do it. You know how I mentioned for-profit loans were illegal?
How they justify them being illegal?
It was just the church was, one of the biblical things was,
Yeah,
do not be,
interest.
yep. So you could not make an interest off of a loan. They added a service fee onto the loan, that was how they made their money on loans. Well, Leo X, in order to pay back Fugger, legalized interest on loans. That was one of his things. The other one, have you heard of these things called indulgences that the Vatican put out? That's because of Fugger. He had to pay him back hundreds of millions of dollars, well, equivalent to dollars at the time. How to do it? Selling indulgences. Every Vatican representative who went out in the field had a Fugger banking representative with him.
Oh my gosh.
And they handled the money, not the Vatican. That was how the Vatican kept their hands clean in all this. It was the Fuggers that handled the money. That was, they may have been, but the main one that you hear about, the Reformation and all that, was directly related to pay the Fuggers back the money that was owed.
And who objected the loudest? The Germans.
Yes. Yeah, he was not a very popular man with Martin Luther. Yeah, he kind of had some 95 objections, I think it was, to this. But yeah, it was money. That was what he did. Whatever he did to make money, and these people got in a bind, and they had to pay him back somehow.
What are indulgences?
They were a thing where you could pay a priest money, and that would save your soul. Yes.
You get one free love.
Yes, it's a free pass to heaven if you spend the right amount of money.
Depends on your list of sins that you did. There'd be a checklist,
Yep.
A bill.
Mhm.
It's like a dim sum.
You can also buy your family out from God, too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Buy him out of purgatory or hell or whatever.
It's
for
like just
anything.
reserving your slot,
Yep.
buying a timeshare.
Yep. Good way of looking at it. I like that. I like
The
that.
badness caused by you doing that horrible thing will be balanced out by you giving us some of your money.
Yep. And in those 7 things I mentioned at the beginning, the ways to make money, keeping your cool. The Fugger crisis of 1509, Cardinal Melchior von Macau was the single largest investor in the Fugger Bank. He had more money invested in Fuggers than anybody else in Europe. He died. The Vatican won, that's our money. Give it to us now. We want full payment of all of his money to us now.
Bank run.
He didn't have the money. He had too much spread out. This would have bankrupted him. What does he do? How do you think, when you got the Vatican is demanding all this money and I don't have it, how do I supposed to handle this? He went on a spending spree. He went out, traveled, lavish parties, lavish dinners, invited all these people so they could see him out spending money. Because if he's out spending all this money, he obviously has the money to pay the Vatican. He bluffed the Vatican into giving him the time to come up with terms that were more favorable to him. He made money. It was all about money. So how many people do you know can bluff the Vatican?
2.
In 1519, Holy Roman Emperor Maximilian I dies. Now, to become Holy Roman Emperor, how do you get there? You spend money. It became down between Carlos I of Spain and Francis I of France. Those are the 2 top contenders for the Holy Roman Emperor. Holy Roman Emperor is decided by the vote of 7 people. There are 4 secular, 3 religious people in Germany that vote for who becomes the Holy Roman Emperor at this time. How do you get those votes? You spend money. Fugger made sure that Carlos I got the election.
Why did he choose Francis?
It's his working relationship with the Habsburg family. The Habsburgs were Austrian originally before moving to Spain. They had a long-standing relation with Maximilian I, Charles's grandfather. It was a family decision. He knew he could get it. So he funded Carlos I of Spain to become Charles V, Holy Roman Emperor. In exchange, he got all of the copper mines and silver mines of Tyrol were now his property. Again, mining interests. He controlled every mine for copper and silver in Tyrol. He controlled the copper industry in Hungary. He controlled other mining operations in Austria and Germany. If you wanted silver or copper, you pretty much had to go through Fugger. He set the price. He also gave it back. quicksilver and cinnabar mines in Spain were given to Fugger. So he now has other mining interests that he has now purchased through the funding of Charles V. Charles V grew extremely annoyed with Fugger. Even though he funded him and got him where he was, he despised the man because of how ruthless he was. And he decided he was going to pass legislation to restrict monopolies and restrict trade, which would have come right into Fugger's pocketbook and crippled him. What does Fugger do? Threatens to call in all of his loans on Charles V, which would have bankrupted the Holy Roman Empire, bankrupted Spain, and forcing Charles V to back down. How many people could get an emperor to back down? He did it.
The cities and municipal governments in Spain didn't really want an emperor.
No. Yeah, Spain was not a big fan of Charles V either, because he never stepped foot in the land until he was made king. Literally, he never set foot in Spain until he became king of Spain. He was from the Netherlands. So. Civil contributions. Again, we go back to those 7 money-making things. Giving something back. This is why the city of Augsburg loves this man. They're in the Anna-Kirche, or the St. Anne's Church in Augsburg. There is the Fugger Chapel within that he financed and built. It is also the grave of Jakob and his 2 older brothers who he was in business with, and the 2 nephews that took over the business from him are all 5 are buried in the Fugger Chapel in the Anna's Church. The Fuggerhäuser in Augsburg. Just love the name. That is the family palace in Augsburg. If you see pictures of this place, it is phenomenal. Unfortunately, it was bombed during World War II, but it was since rebuilt. And to this day, the Fugger family still lives in the palace. It was the first example of Italian Renaissance architecture to be built in Germany. And because of his time in Venice, he loved what he saw, and he brought it back to Germany. So we have the Fuggerhäuser in Augsburg. In the St. Moritz, I'm going to butcher this name, my apologies, this church is in St. Moritz Predicar Stiftung. This is a church in the city of Augsburg that he financed. He built this church, and it's one of the big Renaissance-style chapels in the middle of the city of Augsburg. He financed that and built that for the city. And then the big one, and the really cool one, is the Fuggerei. That's a weird-sounding name. The Fuggerei. The Fuggerei is the first example of low-income housing to be built anywhere. He built housing that anybody, as long as they were employed, could live in these properties for 1 gold piece a year. Giving something back, supporting the working people.
Okay, so I'm like, he's not making money.
No, but this was his whole thing, giving back.
I guess it's important to have like an end goal for money. Otherwise, it's just money to money, and you don't end up with anything useful.
And also, he lived in Augsburg. If he was as ruthless to the people of Augsburg as he was to the rest of Europe, they'd have driven him out at some point. But by making himself so loved within the city, they supported him. They still think he is an amazing man in the city of Augsburg. To this day, the Fuggerei is still in existence. It is still occupied. The rent for any working person is €1 a year. Yeah.
That's insane.
And that is totally funded by the Fugger family to this day. Yeah. So he did do a lot of good things for his people. If you weren't one of his people, and you couldn't give him money, he really didn't have much time for you. But if you had something you could give him, yeah, you're his best friend. But for the city of Augsburg, he gave back to them. Then we get to his death, and then we got some issues. Because he had cared nothing for his wife. She was purely a financial arrangement to bump him up a level in status. He had no heirs, no children at all. What happened to the company? It ended up going to 2 of his nephews, who did a pretty decent job. They actually managed to take the company and bump it up financially a little more and raised it up. But then in 1600s, early 1600s, Spain still owed a ton of money to the Fuggers, both from Charles V and from his grandson Philip, who took over later. They owed a lot of money to the Fugger family. What happens? Spain declares bankruptcy. All of that money that was owed to the Fuggers is now gone. Almost completely destroyed the company business. They barely managed to survive it out just because they had enough resources other parts of the world that they were able to rebound. But that absolutely just, they became from this big, huge family up here, just back down to the middle level banking. They still exist to this day doing banking work, but they're nowhere near the level that they were under Jakob and his family. Any questions on this? Anything?
How involved were his brothers in the company before that?
The two, George and Ulrich, who were his older brothers, they were the first and second born. They started the company, and they brought Jakob in because of his financial knowledge.
Oh, okay. So
It was when they, yeah, and when they died, he ended up with the company all to himself. So that was how he got up in there. So yes, to this day, the Fugger family still lives in Augsburg. They still live in the Fuggerhauser. They are still heavily involved in the European banking trade, but they are not quite, they are not the 400 billion personal wealth that they used to be. They're still a very well off family, but they are not the level they were once. Yes.
His involvement in the mercury industry had far-reaching consequences to the world's economy.
Yes, he was involved in it. Yeah.
When Spain went bankrupt, couldn't the Fuggers just have said, well, then give me New Orleans or Cuba or something like that?
They probably could, but that was just with the nephews in charge. They weren't the same people as Jakob,
Yeah.
so it did not work out. He was just absolutely a ruthless businessman. If he did something, it was done for money. That was it.
You mentioned people hated him. Was that partially because of like the association with nobility and blood, and he didn't have the blood?
No, people hated him because if you needed money, he was who you had to deal with, and you knew you were going to have to pay for it.
I see.
Yeah, he
Not
just
a nice man.
no, he did not treat people well. It was only, what can you give me? What can I make from you? Was his only interest in. Any other questions? Anybody?
Did he do for his nephews what his mom did for him? Like, did he ever send them to school or like formally train them? Or was it just
Yes, they came up there. They knew they were involved in the business through the family, so they knew what was going on. The one I knew ran one of his other banks, and I think it was London, and I can't think where the other one was, because he had banking operations all over Europe. They had the Fugger banks. Yes.
But his nephews probably would have inherited his lordships, but do you think they got the imperial county?
No,
That might have just been...
that stayed with him. No, they did not get the nobility title.
Oh, they didn't get the lordships?
Well, they got the lordships, but they did not get the county. Yeah.
What became of all the provinces he had acquired?
Eventually, they were sold off. Eventually sold off just so the family would keep their money. Yes.
Just a question about indulgences. I mean, I know what they are and everything, but if Vatican was selling indulgences to repay the loans from Fugger, and then the Cardinal dies, and the Vatican wants that money back, why couldn't Fugger have, is it you owe me money, let's just write off what's owed as repayment of that debt?
That was kind of what they wanted to do.
Uh-huh.
They kind of wanted to, the Vatican wanted to claim all that money so they could say, here's some of your payment. Plus also, the Vatican was nearly broke at this time. So they had to kind of, some of it for them, some of it for Fugger. But yeah, Fugger was just, because he knew, he would get some of that money back, but to make the initial payment,
All the lump sum.
would have bankrupted him.
Okay.
So he managed to, by bluffing the Vatican, he was able to get it so he could pay it back in Yep. Anything else, Jacob? Oh, well, thank you everybody for coming out. If you like German history, thank you, Airplane.
Dragons are last time.
If you like German history, I'm doing a class tomorrow at 1 o'clock on a man named Gotz von Gottlingen, or Gotz of the Iron Hand, a very colorful knight from the early 1500s. And if you'll pardon the French, he is the man responsible for popularizing the term, "you can lick my ass." He is a very colorful character, and yeah, he lived, this like Fugger lived to make money, Gotz lived to fight. That was his whole life. So, I'm here back at AS7 tomorrow at 1 o'clock if you're interested in that. So thank you everybody for coming out. The attendance here is awesome. I was not expecting more than about half a dozen people, so seeing this crowd, I am thrilled. Thank you all. Thank you. Yep.
What can I say? The title of the
Yep. Yep.